Alright, so today we're going to continue looking at Hardy-Weinberg, and we're actually going to talk a little more about some assumptions that is made when you're using the Hardy-Weinberg equations, and actually when you are considering that a population is in equilibrium, or in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So what does this mean? When we say that a population is in equilibrium, this is going to assume that evolution is not occurring. Evolution is not occurring. This is what we mean when we say that a population is in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. For this to happen, this means that your allele frequencies will stay the same from generation to generation. Which means that your P and your Q values, remember that you had P plus Q equals 1, P and Q will stay the same. P and Q. So what are the conditions that you have? There's 5 conditions here. 1, that a population size is large. The reason why this is important is because if we compare this, so versus if we're comparing this to a small number of mates, the less mating you have available, the more likely that your population is going to change. But if you continue to have a large population, then it's less likely that evolution or that this change could occur. 2 will be random mating is occurring. Versus if we saw sexual selection. If for some reason one mate was being chosen over the other, that's more likely, again, going to cause evolution. So on the left, we have things that would happen or wouldn't happen if evolution is not occurring. And on the right, these are things that could actually cause, potentially, evolution to occur or could change these factors. Next, you have that no mutations are occurring. Then you have no genes are input from other sources, such as immigration, so literally genes moving in, new organisms moving in. And then the 5th is that no selection is occurring, compared to versus a selecting force is present. So if you have all 3 of these, or I'm sorry, all 5 of these conditions, this means no evolution is occurring. If all 5 are true, then we can assume that the population is going to stay in equilibrium and that your P and Q values, your allele frequencies, will stay the same. So one thing here, if we want to talk about an example that could occur, we can talk about some different generations here. Give an example within generations. So we can say that the parental population, P1, has a P value of 0.7 and a Q value of 0.3. Then you have 10 years have passed, another generation is being reached. So this is your next generation. So we'll see just P2 here, just to throw another generation. And in this generation, you have P equals, and actually maybe we should change that to G. G1, generation 1, G2, generation 2. Our first P value could be 0.69, and our Q value can equal 0.31. Between this first generation change, first to second generation, you can actually assume right here that no evolution has occurred. It's not really a significant difference between those two. However, if another 10 years pass, and you get to your G3, your third generation, and your P value changes to, let's say, 0.4, and your Q value changes to 0.6, then you can say that evolution has occurred. There's a chance that there's some evolution occurring. If you look down here at this image of the flowers, here you see the different generations, generation 1, generation 2, generation 3. This is actually in a population where there's incomplete dominance. Or an incompletely dominant trait. So we can say a black flower with a white flower and makes these gray flowers. What we see here is our P equals 0.7, and then in the next generation we have 0.5, and in the next generation we have 1. And whereas for the Q value, the recessive gene, we see 0.3 to 0.5 to 0. So here we definitely see evolution is occurring or has occurred. So if you see evolution occurring, what should you be able to assume? You should assume that there is something, one of these conditions, that are not being met. So maybe there is some sort of new selecting force. Maybe some random, non-random mating has occurred. Maybe this is inside of a lab. Maybe the population size isn't large, and if we're just looking at the pictures, it's really not large. So here, if these 5 factors, these 5 conditions are true, we assume that no evolution is occurring, and that our P and our Q values will stay the same throughout several generations. However, under the following conditions, we're going to actually predict that evolutionary change will occur. If these things happen, then evolution will occur. The first is going to be your mutations. If a mutation is going to occur, there's a chance that one phenotype becomes more frequent. Okay. And this is the first kind of change that could occur that could cause evolution. The second is the idea of gene flow. And with gene flow, this is going to be, examples would be immigration or emigration, people moving or organisms moving in or out of a certain place. The idea of migration could cause some changes there. So literally with gene flow, this means that genes are moving in or out, and there's some directionality to that. In or out, and some direction to that. The third is the idea of non-random mating. And this could be done by someone else or the organism itself, but basically you're selecting for specific gene combinations. And the next is called genetic drift, and genetic drift is something that's actually random. Genetic drift can be random. A random change in the environment. An example of genetic drift could be scooping fish from a pond. And putting it in a tank. For genetic drift, there's actually 2 effects that can occur. Two effects that can occur. One is called the bottleneck effect, and the second is called the founder effect. So genetic drift usually occurs by chance, and in this case, some individuals are going to be left behind, And that's not going to be due to their health or their strength, but by random. And usually it leads to no true adaptations. However, we have some effects that occur. The bottleneck effect is when the population size is reduced for one generation, or at least one generation. So this could affect your P and Q values because of that change. However, the population might not be able to adapt due to new selection pressures. So population size is reduced for one generation. This could cause inability to survive or adapt to new selection force. The second effect is known as the founder effect. And the founder effect is when your new colony, kind of like the fish in the tank, is started by few members or few originals, few of the original population. And this can actually cause, or will cause, a reduce in variation, and a non-random sample. So what does this mean? That means in both cases we're going to affect our P and Q values. We're going to affect our frequencies. And the last one is just selection in general. And this is going to be the idea of natural selection. And simply meaning that the selection, the pressure or force leads to a more fit organism. There is some organism in, not saying that we're making a more fit organism, we're saying that there is an organism in that population already that is considered to be more fit. One final thing that we want to just kind of mention at the bottom here, and please take some time to look at these review questions, but if we're talking about genetic variation, I just wanted to go back to the idea of how does this happen? Genetic variation is going to be due to three basic things. Mutations, first of all. Second is going to be gene flow, the movement of new genes into a population. So you're going to basically change who you can mate with and what traits they're bringing in. And then the last is going to be just sex in general, sexual reproduction. The fact that we can get a mixture of traits or alleles. So mutations could cause new traits to form. Gene flow means that new traits are added to the gene pool. In gene pool. And sexual reproduction means a mixture of those traits. Make sure you take some time to look back over these factors and understand what does Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium mean, what are reasons that are going to cause the equilibrium to not be met or to be untrue. Take a look back over your notes and make sure you start studying for this unit, for Unit 7. So far it should be pretty easy, but by today you should be fairly comfortable with working with the equation itself. And make sure you finish up your note card and the rest of the lecture tool questions.